Hi, everybody. Eric here with Smart Pot Fabric Planters, back with another episode of the Growing Revolution podcast. And today's guest is Rick Stone. He hosts a YouTube channel called Our Stoney Acres. He's a passionate gardener, has been for decades. He's a very knowledgeable source of gardening. He's a fan of Smart Pot Planters, so we wanted to get him on the show and kind of see what his journey has been like in the gardening community and where he's going. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Rick Stone. How you doing today?
Good, really good, thanks.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So Rick, can you describe your introduction into gardening? Your website says that you've been an avid gardener for over 25 years. What got you into gardening so passionately?
Well, my parents, my wife's parents, and our grandparents all were big gardeners, and so it was kind of always part of our family. But you know, the first few years we were living in apartments and things like that, and so we didn't really have that. So the first time we bought a house, we'd also just started having our family, and kind of the combination of we now had some space and we were now responsible for these little people. We really started thinking about the type of food that we were eating and decided that we wanted to try and produce as much of it as we can. You know, we're not anywhere close to everything we eat, but we wanted to produce as much food as we could organically, without pesticides, without herbicides and fertilizers and things like that. And so that's that organic passion and making sure that, you know, that we were feeding our kids right and you know, giving them good stuff is really kind of what got us started and interested in it.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I feel like kind of 25, 30 years ago is kind of when the whole organic movement started taking off too.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's cool that you guys latched on and were early adopters there. So I saw that you completed a Master Gardener course at Utah State University. You know, I've always heard of Master Gardener programs, but I've never really dove in. What does a Master Gardener course teach that would make it worthwhile for new gardeners to check out?
Well, for a new gardener, I would probably say you ought to hold off a few years. You want to have a few years experience under your belt, because some of the stuff that they're going to go into in the Master Gardener program, you need to have had some experience with it first, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So the Master Gardener program, it covers a lot of different things, and I was glad that I took it. It was very enjoyable. I met a lot of people. It actually was a big impetus for why we started all of this online stuff that I'm doing. I wish that it spent more time on fruits and vegetables than it did. It's also going to teach you about lawns and trees and, you know, all that kind of stuff as well. But it is a super good program, but it's not that it's, again, gardening's not rocket science, but it's a little more, I think you would get more out of it if you had, say, 3 to 5 years experience under your belt, because then you would know the right questions to ask and the right things to really be digging for, because there's lots of interaction with your instructors and lots of opportunities to learn that way. So, you know, maybe I would say hold off for a few years before you went to do the Master Gardener program. The other thing is it's a big commitment. So it's like something like 50 to 60 hours of classwork, and then you have a whole bunch of other seminars you have to attend, and then you have to do a bunch of volunteer hours as well. So it's a big commitment, so you got to be ready for it. That's for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense. I suppose, you know, in martial arts, you know, you have different belts that you have to get, and Master Gardener is black belt. So, you know, you don't want to be skipping steps here.
Yeah.
Get some experience under your belt, and then if you really feel like you want that knowledge, dive in.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes sense. So what prompted you to start Our Stoney Acres on YouTube?
Well, so we actually started out with just a website. And I had always loved blogs. I'd followed a bunch of homesteading and gardening type blogs. And I thought, you know, that's kind of cool. And so we started ourstoneyacres.com about 4 years before we actually started the YouTube channel. And we kind of built that website and kind of, you know, added a bunch of articles to it. And originally it was kind of more urban homesteading and gardening. And now we have zeroed in on gardening, and everything is about vegetable gardening and growing your own food. the YouTube thing kind of just came naturally out of that. I started teaching online courses. So I created a seed starting course and a year-round gardening course and a few things like that. And YouTube originally was meant to kind of be promotion for those courses, and it's kind of blossomed since then. And we try to do a weekly video and teach people a little bit about gardening and interact with them, and it's been a really fun opportunity to do. And we've really been pushing hard the last 3 years to build that audience and grow that community, and it's been a lot of fun to do that.
Yeah. How many followers do you have on YouTube?
We're
right
just
now?
about to 100,000. Like, we'll be to
Nice.
100,000 by the end of the summer, if not sooner. We're like
Yeah.
3,800 away from 100,000. So
Well, very cool. You'll be getting your YouTube little plaque pretty
Yeah.
soon.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Nice. So is our Stoney Acres and like the classes that you're teaching online, is that your full-time job, or is that a side job?
It
Do you have
started. It started
a
out
main
as
income?
it started out as a side job, and it's still a very busy side job. So my wife has come in and she's helping me. We're not quite to full time yet. We're hoping to be there again by the end of this summer, where I can feel like I have a second business that I'm hoping to maybe turn over to somebody else and let them take that opportunity away from me so that I can do the online stuff myself. That keeps me out of this office, if I can do that. So right now, not quite full time. It is, my wife works about 20 hours a week for me, and then I put about 25 to 30 hours a week into the online business. So
Yeah. I think, people who probably watch your videos don't realize how much back end work goes into the preparation for, what you're going to put together. And then I'm sure the back end editing as well, takes up hours. I just know from my own experience doing this podcast, like it's crazy how much time it takes to be prepared to put out some good content.
it really does. I had a neighbor ask me the other day, because he's seen my stuff, and he's like, how long does it take you to do that? And so I sat down and kind of thought about it for a minute. And one 10-minute video, I probably spend about 3 hours total, and then promoting it beyond that, but just getting it ready is about 3 hours. So
Yeah. Now getting into smart pots, you've got a lot of videos with smart pots in there. How did you get introduced to smart pots, and how would you describe like your relationship with the company?
you guys actually found me, so
Nice.
which is fun. I think I kind of hit that size that you guys were interested in me, and which was flattering to me. And so we kind of started a relationship it's been about 14 months ago, and we're just going through. And I the thing that I don't ever want, and I think this fits with your guys's opinion, which is why I think we work so well together. I don't ever want a video to be a sales video. So I'm not going to do a video trying to sell people smart pots. Instead, I'm going to show people how to use smart pots and how to become better gardeners by using those smart pots and using that as a product. And I think you guys feel that those are the type of videos that you want. And so it just seems like a great fit for me to be able to do that. And my yard's getting full of smart pots now. I'm starting to run out of places to put them. So
Had you ever used smart pots before we reached out to you?
I
Or
had
fabric
used,
pots in general?
I had used fabric pots in general, and I had a few smart pots as well. So
Nice.
yeah, it was something that I was used to, and as soon as the fabric pots that I used before were all just like little 5-gallon ones, and as soon as I saw the
Mhm.
20 and the 15-gallon, I was like, wow, we're all over those. so
Nice.
So yeah.
Nice. So do you have a favorite smart pot product? Is it like our 15 or 20-gallon containers, raised beds,
So
hanging pots?
it's a split here. So I love the 15 and 20-gallon containers, because where we're using our smart pots, it's on patios and decks and in areas that have gravel where we can't plant and stuff like that. And so it's a little bit hotter, and those bigger bags seem to do better in those hot areas, those really hot sunshiny areas. So I really like those big bags. But the other thing that I'm really digging right now is the compost sack. So I got one of those last fall, and we did a batch of compost in it, and I did a video on it, and it worked great and was fun. And I'm using I let that compost because it was late fall, so I let it sit over the winter. And I'm using that compost now, and I'm just like, wow, this is awesome. So my daughter's getting one now for her house, and so kind of, I love those big pots, but I also am digging the compost sack.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the compost sack, and I've been using smart pots for years, but for whatever reason wasn't like a big composter until kind of recently. And it's just amazing like how much organic material, we're throwing away in the trash that, could be going into the compost pile and then going into the garden. And, we're just saving money on fertilizer that way, reducing our carbon footprint and whatnot.
For sure.
So, yeah, and I would say for people who want to get into composting, but think like 100-gallon compost sack is intimidating, start out with like a 15-gallon smart pot, and it does the same exact thing. And then once you fill that up, then you can go ahead and get a 100-gallon and start filling that bad boy up.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
cool. So smart pots are great for growing productively early and late in the season. Do you have any favorite season extension tips that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I do. And so that everybody out there knows, I love season extensions. So we live in a zone 6 garden, and so our growing season is about 5 months. And so I dig anything that can help me stretch that growing season out. I love it. So we have been using the smart pots. One thing about containers is in somewhere as cold as we are and colder, you can't grow in containers all through the winter because they freeze too hard. But I'm using the smart pots to, the nice thing about them is I can move them to the warmer places in my yard. So we have our house faces south, and we've got this big long kind of wall that has sidewalks and everything on it. And so what I'm doing is getting things started in the garden, and then moving as the weather gets colder. I move those smart pots up against that south-facing wall, and that really extends the growing season. And then if we throw on top of that, either some heavy fabric row cover or a hoop house, I end up being able to use those containers 6 or 8 weeks longer than I would normally in the fall. We had stuff growing until about Thanksgiving last year in our smart pots out, and we had them it was nice because they were right by the door. We had some parsley growing, we had some broccoli and a few things like that, and we were able to just walk right outside. We didn't have to mess with the snow or anything. They were just right there. So that, and the key to extending your growing season, whether you're using containers or growing in the ground, is to offer protection. So you need to have a heavy fabric row cover, or you need to have a hoop house or a cold frame. Cold frames don't really apply to containers because cold frames are normally pretty short, but a nice mini hoop house or a greenhouse or just a heavy fabric row cover in those containers is going to, really allow you. And then the ability to move them to warmer spots is also what's really nice, and those smart pots are awesome for that.
Yeah, we in the colder climates, in the spring and in the fall, it's really only cold during the nighttime, and if you can protect your plants, during that freeze time, when the sun comes back up, they can, just continue doing their thing. Yep, so a little protection goes a long way to increasing your harvest.
Yeah, and I love season extension. So.
Well, it just makes sense. If you're going to have a garden, why not garden year round and figure out how to make it possible?
Yeah,
and your case in point that it is possible.
And the thing is it doesn't have to be complicated. I mean, just doing something like I said, moving those containers against a wall and covering with a fabric row cover at night is going to add 6 weeks to either end of your, that's 3 months that you've added to your growing season. And then if you throw a cold frame in the ground in the garden or something as well, I'm harvesting spinach and carrots and lettuce and all kinds of stuff in January in a zone 6 garden. And you can do that all the way down to about zone 4. The people in the really cold places, you may not get that, January, February harvest. but you're still going to extend that growing season, 3 months total by using those practices.
There's one lady on Instagram that like she's somewhere in Canada and she's got cold frames growing, and it's just awesome to watch her like go out there, in a foot of snow,
Yep.
open that sucker up, and her plants are just looking
Yeah,
amazing.
no, I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah,
Nice,
that's
nice.
cool. Yeah.
Rick, how do you pick the topics for your videos? Are you focusing on like the calendar and what growers will be doing at that time? Or are you focusing on hot like search terms or phrases? How are you going about that?
Well, obviously, I want my YouTube videos to be successful. I hate it when I have one that doesn't have a lot of views, and I want people to be watching them. But at the same time, I'm not out for, I'm not trying to clickbait them either. I want them to be something that's useful. And so the things that I've been finding here recently that are doing really well and that people are really engaging with is planting guides. And so I'm focusing specifically this year, I'm focusing on what you can be growing if your last frost date is in May, which is basically me. And that kind of then, frost dates don't exactly correlate with gardening zones, but basically that's going to be people that are in zones 5, 6, and maybe 7, which is a lot of the country. And so I've been focusing on what can you be planting in January to get ready for that May frost date. What can you be planting in February and March? And those seem to be really resonating with people, and we've had a lot of success with those. So I like that. And then seed starting is always a real big popular thing. And then planting stuff that's outside of the norm, zone wise, timing wise. So the season extension stuff is really popular, and people seem to like that. If I'm teaching people what can you plant in August, most people aren't thinking about planting in August. Well, there's a ton of stuff you can plant in August to get a harvest all the way through December, and
Sure.
so those kind of things. So I try to look at things that I know are going to be popular, but at the same time, I'm doing it because I want to teach people how to garden. I want them to be successful, and so I try to, every once in a while I'll bite the bullet and say, okay, well, I know this video on how to thin peaches is not going to get a lot of views, but some people are really going to want that, and so I'll do a video on something knowing that it's not going to get 50,000 views or something like that, but a lot of those what to plant this time of year topics are really popular.
Yeah, and I was perusing your website last night, and you have a planting guide based on what month of the year you're in. And just as somebody who wants a quick, easy resource, like I loved that section, and I'm gonna bookmark that and refer to it because that's one thing that I haven't really done is been like a year-round gardener, even though I've like lived in Southern California. Like I just have the Wisconsin mentality of like, oh, you garden in the spring and then you harvest in the summer and fall and then you're done. So I need to get out of that mindset and garden all year.
And even in Wisconsin, you can garden all year. It's Alaska
Absolutely.
that you can't garden all year, But there's something you can grow all year long, even in those really cold areas.
Yeah, yeah. Or if you've got a garage, you can set up a grow light and be productive indoors too.
Exactly, and that's something that we've really added a lot of here lately is microgreens and sprouts and things like that as well. So
nice. Yeah, yeah. They're just gaining in popularity as well. So on your website, it said that you produce on average 800 to 1,100 pounds of fresh produce annually. At this point, are there any produce items that you're still buying at the grocery store?
Well, we still have 2 kids at home, and so we don't live on a big, unfortunately, we live in the city, and so we just live on a little quarter acre lot. So yes, especially in the wintertime, there's still stuff that we're buying from the store. The first thing that came to my mind was Brussels sprouts. It's hard to grow Brussels sprouts in Utah. We have really bad aphid problems in the fall. So we almost always buy our Brussels sprouts. And then, in the wintertime, we're still, buying a few greens and the occasional tomato. We've gotten to the point to where we just don't like store-bought tomatoes. They're awful. But every once in a while, you
When
got
you
a
grow
dish
your
that,
own, it's
yeah,
hard to go to store-bought tomatoes because they
yeah.
taste like cardboard.
So yeah, we still and about a third of our garden is in potatoes, either sweet potatoes or white potatoes. But even at that, we're and just so that it makes sense, we're 100% plant-based eaters, and so we eat a crap load of fruits and vegetables. And so like potatoes, we end up, our potato harvest will usually last us till about January, and then we're buying potatoes, sweet potatoes, and regular potatoes, for the last of the winter months and stuff like that. But we try to do, and by the way, I need to go update that because we're at more like about 1,500 pounds now because we've got all
Nice.
of our fruit trees are now in full production, and so when we add that in, it makes a big difference. So
Yeah, that's really inspiring to me because I'm a new homeowner myself and I've got like basically a third of an acre. So, that to me, like you've kind of set a high bar that I hope to get to, one day soon.
and the thing to
Uh,
realize too is I don't I mean, I have a quarter acre lot, but only about a third of my backyard is garden. I still have
yeah,
grass. I still, we
I've
have a
noticed
swing
that.
set for the grandkids, all that kind of stuff. So you can produce a lot. I mean, I could produce a lot more if we didn't have to have somewhere for the grandkids to play, So
Yeah, I mean when I read how much you produce and then I kind of looked back at your backyard and saw that you still had a big chunk of turf grass, I was like, "Holy cow,
yeah.
like he's barely scratching the surface to what he really could do." So
And a
that's
lot of
awesome
that
that
is
you can have the best of both worlds.
yeah, a lot of that is succession planting and season extension and all that kind of stuff. Plus, we grow a lot of potatoes. So
Yeah, nice. So, you're in Utah Zone 6, and you had mentioned that, Brussels sprouts are challenging to grow because of aphids. Are there any other challenges that you've faced, and how have you overcome that, or have you been able to?
well, zone 6, zone 7 are kind of a sweet spot. There's a lot of stuff that you can grow here. Obviously, we're not growing oranges, we're not growing, mangoes or, things like that. But pretty much everything that we would like to grow, we can grow here. Brussels sprouts, just because we have such a terrible aphid problem, is a little bit challenging. Beyond that, though, yeah, I mean, I have a hard time with cauliflower, but that's everybody has a hard time with cauliflower, or most people do, anyways. But beyond that, I think pretty much everything we want to grow, we can grow here.
Yeah, I've only grown cauliflower once. Actually, I'm doing it again this season, and my first run at it was not very successful.
Yeah,
So
I'm not sure what it is about cauliflower. I guess I should know that because I'm supposed to be the expert, but I don't know what it is. But cauliflower is just tough for me to grow. I've always had a hard time with it. I try it almost every year, but I never get a massive harvest of it.
yeah, those professionals, they got some trick up their sleeve, I
Yeah,
guess, or
might be the
who
climate.
knows what they're giving it to them.
Yeah, it might be the
Yeah,
climate in
that
Southern
that could be it
California.
too.
Yeah.
So on your website, I noticed you have the Gardening Academy.
hmm
Can you talk a little bit about that? How long you've been running that, and who that might be geared towards?
Yeah, sure. So the Gardening Academy it's a private membership service where I actually teach people how to garden, and so it's kind of a group coaching effort. And we have a super good following there. We've actually doubled the size of the academy this spring. So we're hoping to get the academy big so that I can go full time, right?
Yeah.
But essentially, is what we do there is we have a couple of really good solid courses that teach you the basics of gardening, that go through everything, and then we also teach you about food storage and canning and things like that. And then every month we have a focus theme that we work on, and then we have events that go around that. So for example, this month was our Get Your Garden Planted challenge, and so everything in the Gardening Academy was focused on getting out there and getting your gardens planted. Next month we're going to talk about summer squashes and how to grow summer squashes, and we've done, I do a mini course every month. We have a planting guide. So you saw the planting guides on the website. We have a much more advanced version of it in the Gardening Academy. It has printables for everybody. I do a video talking about it. We also do a Q&A every month where I answer questions. The members can come in. It's a private, or it's not a private, but a group Zoom call that we do. And I do that. And then we do recipes and canning advice and the monthly mini course on some specific gardening topic. We've been doing it for about 2.5 years now and are really focusing hard to get that built up so that hopefully I can stop being a bookkeeper and start being a full-time gardener. So
nice. So it sounds like you started the Gardening Academy before COVID hit. Did you get a nice bump in participants when everyone got
yeah,
homebound?
we definitely did that first spring, especially. The thing that COVID did though is it really gave us a big bump on some of our regulars. So we've got a bunch of standalone courses too, and we really had a big bump on the sales of those standalone video courses. The YouTube channel really went crazy. At that time, that's a big part of our growth was during that time frame, and then the website did really well during COVID too. So yeah, a lot of people were interested in gardening during that time frame.
Yeah, not too many positives from COVID, but I think one positive is that a lot of people got, either into gardening for the first time or back into their gardens. And yeah, I think, 2021, 2022, like some people dropped off as they, wanted to go travel and, get outside of their property. But yeah, if there is an upside to COVID, it's the fact that people were gardening more for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So you're really interactive with your followers. Are there any gardening stories that you've heard that just make you laugh when you think back on them, or just
yeah,
I don't know, funny anecdotes?
One of my favorite actually doesn't have to do with the online people, but when we first moved to this area, we were obviously already had been gardening. We lived here where we live right now for about 10 years, and I had a bunch of neighbors that saw me doing the gardening thing, and I said, what, I'll teach you, if you'd like. And so we did a class at a local church and had, I don't know, maybe about 30 people that came. And after the class, one of the people came up to me who was a neighbor that lived close by, and he said, yeah, we got all gung-ho about gardening a couple of years ago, and we went out back and we literally dug up half our backyard and planted this garden, and it did really, really well until about the middle of July, and then it was all full of weeds, and it just went, and now they put almost all of it back into grass because they overwhelmed themselves basically by too much work. And I've actually heard a similar story to that several times over the years as I've been teaching, and I've had people I've done speeches at like home and garden shows, and same thing, people will come up and say, I'd love to garden, but I did it and I just got overwhelmed, so.
Yeah, gardening, it can be a lot of work. Weeding, it's kind of funny. I came across a gardening club in Southern California, and their name for their club was the Weeders, which, yeah, if you want a productive garden, weeds are going to get in. You got to get rid of them. So
yeah, and my advice to new gardeners is if you really want to be a good gardener, you need to start small. You may have grand visions of having a garden as big as mine. I mean, we've got, our garden's 25 by 40, plus we have 4 raised beds, plus we have probably 20 or more smart pots hanging out in the yard now too. But if I were to have jumped right in at that level, I'd have been overwhelmed. There's a learning curve to gardening. And so starting small, I think, is the key. A couple of raised beds, maybe a 10 by 15 foot in-ground garden, maybe 10 smart pots, would be the way to start. Get that under your belt, get a little experience, then add some more space.
Makes sense. Baby steps.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite consumable plant to grow, and is that also your favorite plant to eat?
Potatoes, I think, are probably our favorite, and we're just getting into sweet potatoes. I haven't been growing them for a long time. We do like sweet potatoes, but I dig white potatoes. And I grew up in Idaho. I worked for a potato farmer, and so I dig potatoes. And so we grow about a third of our garden is dedicated to all the different types of potatoes, and we grow red potatoes and Yukon Golds and the purples and all of that, so that we have a ton of potatoes. So those are probably my favorite to grow. And then probably next would be tomatoes. Obviously I love tomatoes a lot, and homegrown is so much better.
Yeah, I'm a big advocate that people should grow what they like to eat. Otherwise, kind of like, what's the point? You're just wasting space in the garden that you could be, growing tomatoes or potatoes in.
Yeah.
So,
Funny story. Last year, I decided I'd never grown eggplants before. And I'm like, I'm the garden expert. I got to grow some eggplants. And so I put 2 eggplants in. We got about 15 or 20. Guess how many we ate?
2, 1.
One. We don't like eggplant. So not planting eggplant. I did a great job. I know I can grow them now. I'm not planting them again. So
Well,
we just don't
hopefully,
like them.
your neighbors got hooked up
Yeah.
with some produce then.
Exactly.
Nice. So what are you doing when you're not in your garden or making videos? I think I heard you mention that you're a bookkeeper.
I am, yeah. So my my career has been accounting and bookkeeping, and I've been doing that for as long as I've been gardening. And we're slowly transitioning, hopefully, away from that. I own my own bookkeeping firm and have about 30 or 40 clients, and so that's what I do for about half the day. The other half of the day, I'm working on the online stuff. So, there's a lot involved that you don't really realize behind the scenes to have even a decent online business like ours. I mean, ours isn't amazing yet, but if I could bite the bullet and go full time, I think that we could probably get things really going. But, I spend a lot of time editing videos. I still do all my own editing and scripting, although I don't, my presentations are not like scripted. They're outlined. So
Yeah.
And then the other thing is I'm always making sure that I try to avoid kind of the wives' tale type, gardening advice. I want to be giving solid, science-backed gardening advice. But at the same time, I always put a banana peel in my tomato hole, when I plant tomatoes, so I still have some quirky things too, but I want to make sure that I'm teaching people the right things. And so every time I do a video, I'm doing some research and some study and stuff like that. So there's a lot to it. And then, just getting it up and getting it, got to create thumbnails and then you got to promote it and you got, so there's a lot involved.
I've never heard the banana peel in the tomato hole trick. I'm assuming that's a boost of potassium for the flowering phase.
It's supposed to make them sweeter. Is
okay.
what I learned it from my father-in-law 30 years ago, and I've never been able to give it up. I've tried all the other things, putting eggshells in, all of that. There's no science behind, like putting an eggshell in the hole so that there's more calcium. It takes years for that eggshell to break down and release its calcium. No science behind that. There's absolutely no science behind the fact that a banana peel makes your tomatoes sweeter, but I do it anyways because my father-in-law told me, and so yeah.
Nice. So what does the future look like for you? Besides trying to go, full time in expansion mode here, are you working on any books or anything else like that?
I have a book in the back of my mind. I'd also love to give a TED talk someday that tells people they need to be planting a garden. Right now, the goal is to really work hard on both growing the YouTube channel, which that is definitely happening, and growing the Gardening Academy. That having that, and again, the Gardening Academy, it's a monthly subscription, so you pay a little bit every month, and having that piece in place and to we're almost to that critical mass where, when we have a certain X number of members, that'll be enough that I can go, okay, see a bookkeeping, so
right.
That's kind of the plan. I have thought about a book, but I don't have the attention span to sit down that long, so we'll have to see if something like that happens in the future. But right now we're working on growing the website, growing the YouTube channel, and growing the Gardening Academy as our goals.
Nice. So for people who aren't following you on social media, they can find you on YouTube under Our Stoney Acres.
And it's
what
Stoney
other social
with an E, so Stoney, Stoney. It's a play on my last name.
Yeah. What other social media accounts are you guys on?
So I'm active on Facebook. So again, just look up Our Stoney Acres on Facebook, and then also on Instagram. It's at Our Stoney Acres there as well. So I'm on Twitter, but I literally haven't posted on Twitter for a long time. So
A lot of people haven't.
Yeah.
but Twitter's back in the news lately, so
Yeah.
who knows? They might have gotten a shot in the arm. So
Maybe. So that's where you can. And then our website is ourstoneyacres.com, and that's kind of the main home of where everything is. We've got hundreds of gardening articles there, and
it's a great website, great resource, and for people who aren't familiar with Rick and his classes, check it out. Whether you jump in and do the whole more hand holding class or the individual classes, you're gonna gain a lot of knowledge from those. So on that note, wanted to thank you for your time. It was really nice getting to know you, and we're looking forward to following your videos and classes in the future.
a lot of great Smart Pot videos coming up this summer. So my daughter just bought a new house, and they've got lead contamination in the ground, and so that we're doing everything in raised beds, and we're going to use the Smart Pot raised beds. So a lot of good stuff coming up this summer. So
awesome. Looking forward to seeing that garden. So thank you again, Rick, for joining us on the Growing Revolution.
Thank you.